This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and struggles. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to think to get the energy and the vitality that you want in the second and better half. And today, we're talking all about lots of different kinds of energy. So tune in if you need a little shot. My guest today is Brodie Welch, and she's a transformational coach, a licensed acupuncturist, board-certified herbalist, and holistic health educator at the confluence of the health and personal evolution. She's the creator and host of A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. Okay, amen. I'm going to that next. I'll be right back. A lifelong student of consciousness, Brodie's been practicing meditation, yoga, and Qigong for over 20 years and holds teaching certifications in each of these disciplines. Brodie synthesizes ancient biohacking techniques from Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and yoga with the latest health research to help self-aware, high-achieving women break the cycle of stress, overwhelm, and sabotage so they can enjoy the lives they're working so hard to create and live into their full potential. Brodie, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Deborah. Thanks for having me.
I'm reading that last little bit and I'm thinking, sign me up. Yep, sign me up.
So seeing yourself in that women who struggle to put themselves on their own priority lists.
Exactly. We're working so hard to do it and to not be in stress, and we're stressing ourselves out while we're doing it. It's quite a treadmill we're on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cultural support for moving faster and faster on that treadmill, and instead of being smarter about it and opting out, there is another way.
And we want to find out all about it. So I love this, and this is really novel for the Flippin' 50 podcast. We often talk so much about current science, Western medicine, and the difference between that and integrative medicine, but we really haven't looked into Chinese medicine very much, maybe one or two episodes over the last 5.5 years. So let's kind of just unpack that as if we're total newbies and just kind of hearing, we know we've heard it before, but how can, first of all, Chinese medicine help us flip 50 and describe to us what it is?
Sure. Well, Chinese medicine is a whole paradigm, a whole system of looking at our health. It has its own worldview and its own system of diagnostics and its own logic. It has different branches. And the sexiest branch is probably acupuncture, which most people I'm sure have heard of, but it also encompasses herbology and exercise, which is not like pumping iron and running marathons. It's more exercising your energy body or your qi. And it has a dietary component to it, thinking about food not just as the macros of fat and protein and carbs, but as the energetics, whether something's heating or cooling, what organ systems it's nourishing, as well as, and so really it's this whole system of philosophy of balancing yin and yang in the body, and this idea that everything in our bodies is reflected in the world outside in the natural environment, and that like increases like. So therefore, if something is hot and busy and active, it's going to increase those tendencies in the body. And if something is slow and cooling and moistening, it's going to increase those tendencies in the body as well. And so we can look through through the lens of Chinese medicine to see ourselves and the world around us in a totally new way. And therefore, we open up this whole new set of tools to make more medicinal choices in our daily lives.
Great concept. And I just want to pause and make this sink in really easily for my audience. Drinking a cup of hot coffee in the morning, if you are having a hot flash, I think you might have just experienced a little bit of Chinese medicine.
Exactly. Coffee is very heating. It's very oily. Same thing with red wine. Not that these things are bad. They could be medicine if those are the energetics that you need. But if you're already hot and dry, adding more heating and drying things to your body is not necessarily going to be medicine. So yeah, that's exactly it. And similarly, if you are going through menopause and you you are, and your hormones are out of whack, it's like you don't necessarily want to go for like a punishing run at the end of a stressful day. Like, that just that idea of being able to really get in touch with what's going to be medicine for our bodies in a particular moment in time is really the ultimate application of Chinese medicine. It's very Taoist. It's like just being this right action in the moment.
So good. Okay. So for my audience who's probably right now sitting on the edge of their seat or they're at the middle of their day somewhere and wants a quick fix, you just told them what not to do when they get off tonight. What should they do if it's been a really stressful day?
Well, I mean, there's lots of ways that stress can manifest, and so it may be that you handle stress by getting out and moving, because that if you've been sitting all day, for example, and that you've been reacting to emergencies in your mind, that it can be really helpful to breathe and move and get that qi stagnation, that sense of pent up energy that we might hold on to in our neck and shoulders, or that we might call liver qi stagnation from a Chinese medicine perspective, that makes us irritable and tense and otherwise, and creates really pain in our bodies as a whole, that we might really benefit from getting out and moving. But that also, the attitude with which we do it matters as well. And so it's like, it's not a one size fits all answer, but considering that, like, okay, maybe if you're inclined to move, perhaps it's going to be something more gentle, like qigong or yoga, or like a little walk in nature, as opposed to going to CrossFit or Orange Theory, or something where you're like really vigorously challenging yourself. Because really, it's, again, like increases like, and knowing what's medicine for you is going to change at a given moment, and depending on what your imbalances are.
So good. I can liken this to, because of course I go to the tangible, right? But I can liken that a little bit to, let's say you have a flat foot. That means it's a very flexible foot. You need a stable, solid shoe. So you need a marriage of the best, of the opposite almost, in order to come back to balance. Am I interpreting that
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. If you are feeling lethargic and your life involves being very sedentary, you might need to be more invigorating and adding more yang to your life by, sort of sparking that fire of, like, yang is if we think about the yin yang symbol, we're imagining the black and white swirls with the little dot of each in the opposite. And that's really a model of the universe. And it's a model of what health looks like in our bodies. And so it's not just like a solid black rectangle next to a solid white rectangle. It implies that each yin and yang implies its opposite, and they actually transform into one another at their extremes. So if you want to have good, abundant energy during the day, we know that you need to get great sleep at night, and that you can't just expect yourself to go, 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 because in nature, it's not like day, 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 night, day, day, summer, 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 spring, fall, winter, summer, summer, summer. Like, there's rhythm, there's balance, there's this pulsation between these two extremes. And we can't just decide that we don't like one of them because it's culturally inconvenient, right? Like, we live in this culture where we're always supposed to be moving and producing. And if we're feeling like you don't have the energy that you want, it could be because you've just yanged yourself to exhaustion and you don't have anything left, in which case, like, honoring your yin, cultivating practices of self-care that involve things like meditation, slowing down, self-massage, introspection, honoring what your soul wants instead of what's like going to be showy and out in the world. It's like, that may be a really important missing piece.
So good. Okay. So I always love to tell audience listeners how we met. So you and I were on the set of the Dr. Nande show, and that was for an episode on simple exercise at any age. Share with our listeners what you were there to talk about specifically.
Yeah, well, I've already mentioned it a couple times. It's this Chinese medicine notion of energy cultivation called qigong. And I wrote an article for the Huffington Post once about how qigong is basically like yoga's less sexy, less showy cousin that is less popular in this culture, but I think is like going to overtake yoga in popularity someday. And I love both. I practice yoga almost every day, as well as meditation. And qigong is like either a moving meditation or a gentle exercise at the same time. It's sort of, listeners might be familiar with Tai Chi, which is kind of like it has a genus and species relationship with Qigong. Qigong is a more general sort of term for energy exercise or energy cultivation. And different movements that you would do in Qigong are designed to nourish different organ systems in the body. And in Chinese medicine, it's not just like I've mentioned the liver, for example. The liver just isn't this organ of detoxification that is underneath your rib cage. It's associated with a pathway, and it's associated with an emotion, with a dimension of the spirit. So like anger, frustration, also creativity. And so when we are moving liver chi, we're tapping into all of that. Liver also has to do with a lot to do with women's hormones, the menstrual cycle, blood, our ability to navigate transitions, to fall asleep at night, to have regular rhythms in the digestive system and in the menstrual cycle and in our diurnal cycles. So, for example, doing some Qigong that benefits the liver will benefit all of those things. So in a way, it's kind of like that movement associated with each organ system that travels on these pathways that we call meridians. And that's basically just like the energy superhighways of the body. And so if we can open those and we can encourage the free flow of energy along these pathways, we're benefiting the organ system. We're also increasing our flexibility, our balance. We are increasing energy. And there's all kinds of really cool studies about Qigong can do, which has benefits from it's been shown to have benefits from everything from things like mood disorders and sleep and memory to balance and bone density and really like pretty much every system of the body. And it's a longevity practice that's been around for thousands of years, practiced in China.
So good. Okay. So for those of you who are listening who think, oh my God, I can't add one more thing, but we do know most of you are very interested in improving balance. So there you go. You can skin more than one cat with this new practice. Okay. So Brodie, you and I have a lot in common. I mean, you work also with a lot of women who are going through menopause and the whole 9 yards of hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, anxiety. What's happening here from
So I mentioned earlier
the Chinese
that
medicine
health is about this balance of yin and yang in the body. And I started talking about yin and yang and the importance, like how they interrelate, but I don't really think I defined it as well as I could. So the yin aspect of the body is that which is cooling and moistening and nourishing. And the yang is that which is active and moving and transforming. And like nothing is solely yin or yang. Everything in the body contains both. But really what's happening with menopause is that we are losing yin. We are losing that which helps us stay cool, that helps us stay, that subdues the consciousness at night long enough so that we can stay asleep all night long. And so and really, like we might we lose the bodily fluids that allow us to be supple and moist everywhere where we want to be supple and moist. And so, really, what's going on is that as the body transitions into this new phase of life, as our vital life force, our essence moves to show up in a new way, just like we did at puberty, right? Like our bodies, our potential of who we could be, we stop looking like girls, we start looking like women, right? And our potential for who we can be and what we can do changes. So menopause is this reorganization of vitality. It's for us to show up in a new way. But what also can show up are these imbalances that are not necessarily fun, like the hot flashes, the night sweats, the insomnia, anxiety, and things like that. And so really and of course, like there's more than one, we don't, there's always variations as far as like what imbalances it lead to what symptoms. But generally speaking, what I see with the vast majority of women that I treat is that even though our bodies are reorganizing and are crying out for some yin, for some cool, for some rest, for some ease, that we're still moving a million miles an hour. And we still are kind of like treating ourselves with these hot, yang, forceful, pushing, striving, doing, producing attitudes that are just kind of like adding fuel to the fire, pun intended. And so really, there's an invitation here to do less, to let go, to really embody self-respect by doing really kind of taking care of our bodies the way that we would if we didn't actually have to prove anything to anyone. Like a lot of times just permission to get more sleep, to take things in a little bit of a slower gear, can help a ton. And really just that changing our expectations of ourselves we can be doing the same things. I'm not saying that we have to like stop all doing and productivity, but a lot of times changing the approach, the attitude with which we do our lives can make a massive difference because it takes the pressure off.
I love that. And I think I just want to kind of dwell on this and maybe beat this dead horse. If if somebody out there is getting it, that may seem like what it is for you, but I feel as if you and I are on the same page. And I just want to clarify that for everybody listening, that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not really saying slow down. You're just saying actually kind of Dara Torres, do you remember she was the older swimmer who went back to the Olympics and she was close to the age of 40. But there's a book that she wrote about what that was like training for the Olympics when she was older, like 20 years older than all of her roommate swimmers. And she used the mantra that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So we're not actually saying you have to aspire to less or you're aging, so you should of course slow down. What we're saying is if you slow down and give your body the
I really
nurturing
love
it
that
needs,
framing,
you can go as fast as
I
you
would
want.
shape it a little differently as well. I would say that a lot of what as we move into menopause, there is this permission, right, where estrogen is not such a main player, and estrogen is one of those things that helps us take care of other people, and that dropping the influence of that so that we become the center of our own worlds as opposed to caring for kids or aging parents or partners, really being able to drop what's not essential, dropping perfectionism, dropping people pleasing, dropping the pressure to do as much as is humanly possible, because a lot of times it's like it's more like a settling into our power rather than continuing to try to prove to ourselves that we are just as good. That we live in this yang addicted world that really prizes moving faster, doing more, being busy, etc. And it can really take a lot of courage to be like, you know what? Like, I took a nap today. I did less than I was humanly capable of. And I say this as someone who is like so addicted to yang. I so identify with how much I get done in a day. And so really shifting that is so empowering. And it means that I'm not burning my adrenals, which are supposed to be our secondary source of estrogen and progesterone post menopause. Instead, that I'm giving myself permission to just live within my energetic means, which is really respectful to do no matter how old we are.
Very cool. I love that. Okay, so if you got here to this show because you saw this on social media, and if you didn't, you're going to see it here in the show notes. But here's the meme of the day, I think, is what if you were the center of your own world? Quote of the day. I love that. Awesome. All right. So I know you see a difference in the way we can show up when we're 50 or 60 or we're 90. And from your perspective, after seeing patients for over 15 years, what do you think?
Well, it's clearly one of the reasons that I moved from being a practitioner towards being a holistic health coach is because no matter what a practitioner will do for you in an office visit, what you do for yourself day in and day out is going to move the needle on how you show up in the world. By far. I have seen this over and over again that from a Chinese medicine perspective, I'll write down on my self-care prescription pad something like, take a half an hour a day for yourself, or start meditating, or movement, or getting more sleep, or making sure that your life is in alignment with what matters most to you. These kinds of things, which are not rocket science, they're like what we all know we need to be doing to take care of ourselves. But month after month, I would be seeing my regulars who would come back for their tune-ups periodically, and I'd be like, so how'd it go? How'd it go with that taking time for yourself thing or that meditation thing or that new exercise program thing. And over and over again, I would hear the same things, which is like, oh, yeah, well, I tried that for a few days and then, life happened and I stopped doing it because it's hard to change habits. And when we're already stressed and exhausted, it's even harder to do something new. And so really the most important thing, if you want to nourish your longevity, or, really, like, there's this concept in Chinese medicine of really cultivating life, right? Cultivating your qi so that you can thrive no matter how long you have on the planet, that it's really the things that the essential habits of self-care, bringing that into automation. So all those things that I just mentioned, nourishing yourself, having a sane relationship with stress and your own expectations, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're moving your body in ways that are respectful, feeling connected to your joy and to other people and to meaning, that this makes such a difference. If you can start your day from a place of centered presence and knowing who you are and what you're about, you're much more likely to stay there throughout the whole day. And so I really encourage people to get a rock solid morning routine that encompasses all of these essential habits of really what I consider self-respect.
Very cool. So I'm going to put you on the spot here because this is something we haven't actually talked about. But I know that a lot of women would maybe relish somebody writing them a note and saying, okay, here's your assignment, take a half hour for yourself today. But I also know that many, or a big percentage of the same women, will say, I was trying, but I couldn't get my brain to shut off. What would you say for that? What would you have them do or not do?
Not being able to get your brain to shut off is usually a sign that your life is jam-packed, and is that there's not really a whole lot of space to digest what's going on in your world. And that is partly a function of, like, first of all, if that's you listening, I would encourage you to not blame yourself for that, but instead to treat yourself with utmost compassion, because there is more expected of women. Like, we have to work harder to earn the same dollars that men are earning. There's more expectations that we are going to be the ones taking care of the household and people and people who need caring for. And so it's like the internalized expectations that we have for ourselves it's like, that's real. Like, and it exists within this context where we of things like capitalism and sexism and racism and like these cultural factors that influence the choices that we make. So we've just got a lot going on, and a lot of it is like, so it can be really just like difficult to claim space even in our own brains. But there is probably a lot that we're doing that is not necessarily a wise investment of time and energy. And so things like so the first question would be like, what, that people claim like, oh, I don't have enough time, or that, yeah, like my mind is so busy. It's like, well, what are you tuning into? Because you're an ecosystem and you're influenced by what you're listening to, right? You're tuning into the Flipping 50 podcast right now. You could be listening to so many different things, but are you also spending time on social media? Are you also ingesting news? Are you also ingesting, gossip, or like things that don't necessarily, that you still have to digest every input that you take in? And it's, so it could be that just giving yourself some mental space can really help with that. Also, recognizing that the mind is just going to think just like the heart's going to beat. And so not trying to fight that, but instead like, well, what is it? What do you need in order to get your mind to calm down? Do you need to take a walk in nature? Do you need to sit and pet a cat? Do you need to get into your body? Do you maybe need to have a different relationship with your body that allows you to feel some peace on a mental level? And that again, that racing is yang, and that kind of overly yang energy showing up in the mind. And so there's plenty of ways to deal with that. But it's at finding something that feels like medicine for you.
Very cool and hopeful. So, I mean, none of this is really news, but I mean, you've delved deeply into why people don't do the things we know we need to do to take care of ourselves.
I've sort of hinted at this
why is it bit already, so
like
hard?
Just that as women, we've internalized more of these expectations because that's because we live in a sexist society. So a lot of what I see a lot of women turning to is, first of all, the people pleasing pattern, which in Chinese medicine is like a lot of earth energy. So the energy of earth, just like Mother Earth, is nurturing. It's supportive of all life. It's very giving. And in excess, it's like, like sort of the downside of earth is you can walk all over it, right? It can be kind of a doormat. Like the energy is just and so people who are more concerned about taking care of everyone else's needs at the expense of their own, like we might consider that an earth depletion pattern in Chinese medicine. Whereas for somebody else, like who might be more achievement oriented, they might be hard driving and hard striving, always looking to teach or lead or to put themselves out there. Like this is the energy of wood, of trees, really. So the wood element, which is all much more yang. It's much more about upward, outward energy. And so it's the kind of thing where, like, for that person, they're identifying too much with what they're doing rather than who they're being. And so that's an example of a wood depletion pattern. And in Chinese medicine, there are 5 elements. There's wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And each one of them can kind of tend towards an exaggeration of itself, or it can embody a very beautiful version of itself. And so really, like, when we kind of can get to know ourselves through the lens of Chinese medicine, we can see, like, oh yeah, this is me being too fiery, or like, this is me being too watery.
Wow. Okay. So you've talked about self-care as kind of a feminist issue and embodying self-respect. What do you mean by that? And how can a
Well, Deborah,
listener actually embody
if
self-respect
somebody told you,
as a woman?
and like in front of me, if we were standing next to each other and somebody said to you, Deborah, I can't believe that you're actually going to sleep when you're tired. I can't believe that you're eating when you're hungry. I can't believe that you're getting up to pee even before you've sent that email. Like, don't you understand that other people need you, or that like what you get done is more important than how you feel? I would be like, back off, buddy. That's a terrible thing to say to my friend. Like, I would never let someone get away with treating you that way. And yet that's how I treat myself when I am buying into one of these lies that I have to be identified with these patterns of depletion, when I'm not necessarily just honoring my yin as well as my yang, my body and soul, as well as how much I get done in a day. And so when I think about embodying self-respect, it's like, how would I act if I actually took that seriously? If you think about the most elegant, dignified person you've ever met, how does she carry herself? Like, do you think that she blows off her workout? Do you think that she is like scarfing down a bagel, like, or over the sink, instead of like giving herself time to like make a salad or like sit down and enjoy her lunch? It's just simply moving and acting in a way where you are owning your inherent worth and the fact that you don't actually need to do anything to earn that deep love and this idea, like, I'm calling it self-respect. Some people might call it self-care, but to me that conjures up images of spa days and pedicures. And self-care is not a one and done. It's not an indulgence, and it's not just there so that we can go back to taking care of everybody else. It's just about embodying self-respect, treating ourselves the way that we would want our best friend, our sister, or our daughter to be treated by the person inhabiting her body.
So good. I love it. So I'm going to go back to the word that we used. We were just talking about, like, depletion patterns, because I think the word patterns is really important here. It's kind of about breaking the patterns, whether it's our thought patterns, which ultimately are everything. They're the reason we have the action and behavior patterns we have, but it's about breaking those, like the chain that we've had going for so long that we've come to believe, like, this is who we are. This is how we operate.
Such a good question.
How can we break those? What's that?
Well, part of why these patterns exist is because they're a way that we can stay safe in the world. It's a way that it's basically a way that we feel like we need to show up. It's a social mask that can help us, that's employed by the ego so that we don't have to grow. Right? Because if I actually had to, for example, if I want to start a new meditation practice or a new workout routine, or just I want to do something different, it's going to affect the people I live with. It's going to affect, it might affect my work schedule. I'm going to need to have some conscious conversations about that and actually set that boundary and claim the right to do it differently. And I need to feel like that's okay. It might mean that I have to give up being perfect. It might mean that I have to give up getting as much done, although it won't. I mean, like there's some good research about the fact that when you do honor your yin and do these things, that you actually can get more done in less time. And that's actually one of the things that I help people do is to create these patterns so that they just like the patterns of self-care or embodying self-respect, so that they are what we default to. So really, it's why it's hard is because it's threatening to the ego, and we think we're going to die and get kicked out of the tribe unless we are perfect or pleasing others or whatever it is. And so a lot of times what we need is a reminder on a regular basis of why it's so important. And we might very well need some support and accountability.
So good. It's so funny. There are no accidents. So literally just before we jumped on to meet for this episode, here we go. I talk to myself, people. So my poor dog, I am sure, is just wondering what is going on. Like, who is she talking to? And I was having a conversation with actually a client that I was thinking of a role play we needed to do because time is the biggest obstacle for her right now. And I'm sure anybody listening can relate. Brodie and I can both relate. I mean, we're all in the boat rowing the same thing. But, talking about the fact that, if you take better care of yourself, you do have better energy. You will probably sleep better and not need to sleep quite so much. And you will get things done in less time. It's the brain fog that keeps you from completing things as quickly. And that I love that you also said, when you do stop to do the self-care, it's like the tortoise and the hare, right? You feel like you're going slower, but you're actually progressing at a much more steady pace.
And along the way,
and you'll feel better
a
when you get there.
Person to everyone in your life. You're going to be able to show up with presence and compassion in a way that if you are running yourself into the ground, being overly self-critical and trying to strive and identify with how much you're doing, that you're going to be far more likely to snap at people. You're going to be far more likely to be irritable and to show up in a way that where you can't possibly be present because you're thinking about 10,000 other things. So it's really it's the paradox in Chinese medicine that we have to embrace, that in order to have good yang, that we need to honor the yin. But similarly, that when we do the yin things, right, when we're doing this sort of deep self-care stuff, embodying self-respect, that our presence transforms others in a really powerful way without us actually doing anything.
Love that. Such a great way to. And Brodie, it's been a real pleasure to have you here.
Well, they can tune into my podcast, A Healthy Curiosity,
get more Brodie,
which is available wherever you get your podcasts. And they can also visit me at brodiewelch.com. It's Brodie with an IE and Welch with a CH.
So awesome. And just for anybody who wants to maybe stick a toe in the water and learn a little bit more about your world and Chinese medicine,
absolutely.
Do you have
well, they can head on over to brodiewelch.com/opt-in-bundle. Opt-in bundle, really catchy, right? But that stands for my calm and centered bundle. And the calm and centered bundle consists of a little breathing meditation and the world's simplest Qigong move, which is for just something that can help you stay grounded and centered throughout your day.
So awesome. And if you are driving, you are walking or jogging, or you are lifting, keep doing your thing, girls. And I got you covered. The links will be in the show notes today. So along with the questions that I asked Brodie, in case you know a girl, who could use this, because I think this is definitely a share with friends. And listeners, if you have a question that I didn't ask, please leave it below the show link at flipping50.com/self-respect. And I love hearing from you. If this episode was helpful, please leave a rating in iTunes and then share it with a friend. Surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. And again, to get the most from this week's episode, check out today's show notes at flipping50.com/self-respect, where you'll find the juicy download Brodie mentioned and also had a link to her on social media. What are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 together.